Jack Skellington has no known birth or death date because his life prior to skeletondom is never really mentioned, but we do have a clue.
Since I am dead, I can take off my head to recite Shakespearean quotations.
Maybe Jack was around during the time of William Shakespeare, which would put a record of his existence as early as the 1590s when Shakespeare became popular. Whatever the details of his life may have been, Jack would spend centuries wandering the globe and becoming infamous for his scares, until he became a citizen of an otherworldly realm called Halloween Town, where he would eventually be appointed Pumpkin King and would attempt to use this power to take over Christmas. To learn about Jack's many different ventures throughout the centuries, the impact of the hot topicification of Jack in pop culture, and what happened after his clash with the King of Christmas, stick around to the end of this video. Boys and girls of every age, do not click away from this page. Come with us and you will see this is horror history. Jack Skellington is the central character of The Nightmare Before Christmas, written by Tim Burton and directed by Henry Selick, and he may be the most iconic mascot for Halloween. Jack has become such a force in pop culture that he appears in many other forms of media and has a ridiculous amount of cameos in other movies, video games, and novels. So when deciding what I consider to be canon, I'm gonna stick to media created by Burton and Selick, and the media with the name of The Nightmare Before Christmas on it. Except for Long Live the Pumpkin Queen, a novel which follows a story about Sally Stitches, which conflicts with the known events that occur in the movie. Sally has two parents in the book who become Jack's in-laws. In The Nightmare Before Christmas, she was not born, but was created by Dr. Finkelstein. There are a ridiculous amount of videos on the internet about Jack's cameos in other pop culture, and while some of them are cool, a lot of them are wishful thinking. But today, I'm focused on those that fit into a canon timeline so that I can properly analyze the official character. Sorry, Fortnite Jack Skellington, but you've been beat out by Jack's split-second appearance in The Other Mother's Egg Yolk because Coraline was directed by Henry Selick. In addition to media appearances, anyone who's ever stepped foot near a black eyeliner teen or young adult past the 4th of July has almost definitely been exposed to Jack merchandise. While merchandise was literally impossible to find within the United States at the time of the film's release in 1993 and for several years after, by the early 2000s, Jack Skellington was literally everywhere. From Hot Topic to the Haunted Mansion ride at Disneyland in Tokyo Disneyland. In October 2001, Jack and the Halloween Town crew were added to the Disneyland ride as part of a seasonal overlay called Haunted Mansion Holiday that stays open until early January. Now, Jack and Sally are featured around all Disney parks and play a major role in Disney's Not So Spooky Spectacular in Orlando. He's also made appearances in over 20 video games, but most of these appearances are not canon, and in fact in many of them, Jack is just a skin, which is ironic because Jack doesn't have skin. There is a reason I bring up Jack's ironclad grip on all things media and pop culture. The rise of Jack also coincides with the rise of the year-round Halloween aesthetic, a sort of unofficial goth subculture that incorporates design elements that were previously reserved for the month of October. I know you know what I'm talking about because this very channel is an example of it. I am an example of it, and you may even be an example of it. The mid-90s and 2000s saw a boom in products related to horror movies, specialty stores that carried Halloween merchandise year-round, and internet communities of like-minded freaks. It all traces back to the Pumpkin King, but to find out how, we've got to take it back to the late 1700s. It is implied that Jack has haunted many towns over the years, developing a reputation for himself. Jack sings about a guy he scared in Kentucky and claims to be known throughout England and France for his natural ability to frighten people. It's tough to say how long he's been terrorizing the inhabitants of the natural world, but the first documented sightings of Jack Skellington trace back to the late 1700s. Jack is revered as the Pumpkin King, and when we first see him, he appears as a flaming pumpkin head on a scarecrow, which the whole town worships.
Everyone hail to the Pumpkin King!
The fiery figure then dives into the fountain and emerges as a skeleton. But the pumpkin form brings to mind the story of Sleepy Hollow, which takes place in 1790 and tells the story of the Headless Horseman, a vengeful figure seeking to reclaim his lost head who can be found in the woods around Halloween. Jack does demonstrate the ability to remove his head, and the pumpkin form resembles a detail from the original story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, where the Headless Horseman uses a pumpkin head as a substitute for his actual head. It seems possible that Jack and the Headless Horseman are one and the same. In the song Jack's Lament, he goes into detail about spending a long time coming up with different ways to scare people, which could be interpreted as his time in Sleepy Hollow. Over a century later, in 1949, he decided to try his bony hand at the high seas and took to becoming a pirate during the events of Henry Selick's James and the Giant Peach. Sometime after Jack's last appearance, he must have become known for his frightening antics, based on the centipede's reaction at seeing and recognizing him in the ship's wreckage. As Jack and the other skeletons fight with the centipede and Miss Spider, Jack is literally broken and pulled apart. But we know he has the ability to reassemble himself, which he does before his next appearance in the era of excess, the 1980s. As Jack continued his mission of spooking people in the human world, he became a symbol of nightmares, particularly for one boy in 1982 named Vincent Monroe. Vincent, a short film directed by Tim Burton early in his career, follows a child who believes that he's the second coming of Vincent Price. He dreams of a skeleton who looks a lot like Jack, along with other scary figures, as well as a woman who looks a lot like Sally Stitches. At some point, Jack also may have crossed paths with Beetlejuice from Tim Burton's 1988 movie, Beetlejuice, because the bioexorcist at one point designs a hat disguised as a big top, and it's topped with a skeleton that resembles Jack's face. I will note that this one is more of a maybe, because the head shape is not quite the same as the other appearances, but if Juice Man is going off memory, it could turn out like this. And it's honestly pretty close to the shape used on the walk around as Jack character at Disney parks. It would make sense for Jack and Juice to meet at some point if the deceased all have to pass through the same afterlife realm. We know that by the late 1980s, Jack is officially residing in Halloween Town and has been titled the Pumpkin King, which admittedly raises some questions about the structure of their local government. There seems to be a mayor and a Pumpkin King. From what I can tell, it's like the UK where you have an elected official and a figurehead monarch, except it seems to be switched because Jack is the monarch and appears to be the one who's truly in charge, while the elected mayor is more of a figurehead.
Jack, please, I'm only an elected official here. I can't make decisions by myself.
We also don't know how Jack became Pumpkin King. He wasn't born into it. It seems to just be a title earned from the community out of respect for his abilities. In the Nightmare Before Christmas Pumpkin King video game on the Game Boy Color, he states, "I can hardly wait to show the good ghouls of Halloween Town my latest trick. Tonight, they will all see why I'm called the Pumpkin King." Regardless of how the title was bestowed upon him, his main responsibility seems to be to make each Halloween a night of terrifying scares in the real world and in Halloween Town. And he most likely came to hold his title fairly recently, because Oogie Boogie, the resident boogeyman and king of all bugs, who seems to be Halloween Town's big mob boss, tells his henchmen that he's never heard of Jack, and they explain that he runs Halloween Town. Oogie Boogie is so threatened by his new presence that he unleashes a bug infestation on the town to ruin Halloween, and orders his henchmen to try to capture Jack, but they bring Sally instead. It's up to Jack to save the town while everyone is hiding from the bug infestation, and he's able to defeat Oogie Boogie, asserting dominance as the Pumpkin King. He also rescues Sally, which is how they meet, and together they celebrate Halloween. But Oogie Boogie waits in the shadows, promising he'll be back, and it will be a nightmare. Jack continues working on making each Halloween scarier than the last, while keeping Oogie Boogie banished to his lair. I mean, Halloween Town's inclusion in the Kingdom Hearts franchise is probably not canon because it's just a crossover game including a bunch of big Disney IPs, but I'm just showing it right now because we can assume that Jack continued working on new scare concepts during this time. In Kingdom Hearts, he makes a heart to power this being known as a Heartless, with plans to use it in the Halloween celebration. Oh, and at some point Jack also gets a ghost dog named Zero, something we can all be jealous of. But Jack's most ambitious project would happen between Halloween and Christmas in 1993, a date we see Jack write on the chalkboard while preparing for Christmas. I know the narrator says 'twas a long time ago at the beginning, but it seems like the narrator may be telling the story from the future. The real-world technology seems to match this. For example, dial phones, the military technology, and the style of the cars. It begins on Halloween, October 31st, 1993. Jack and his constituents, the citizens of Halloween Town, celebrate by descending on the world for a night of scares. Whatever it is that Jack pulled off over there is celebrated immensely by the town as they welcome him back home for the night. But everyone is so excited that Jack feels swarmed by them to the point that he has to escape to get away from them.
Ooh, Jack, you made wounds ooze and flesh crawl.
Thank you very much.
This is something that many celebrities experience, and for some it can be overwhelming, which seems to be how Jack is taking it here. But in addition to feeling overwhelmed by his fans, Jack is also feeling something else, a kind of Halloween fatigue.
Nice work, Bone Daddy.
Yeah, I guess so. Just like last year, and the year before that, and the year before that.
Look, if you take anything away from this video, it's that you should never call anyone Bone Daddy. There's just no scenario in which that's an acceptable nickname. Jack goes into the cemetery to be alone, where he laments via song, expressing feelings of boredom and feeling unfulfilled, despite having what he's always dreamed of.
Year after year, it's the same routine, and I grow so weary of the sound of screams.
Jack is not alone, because Sally hears his song while hiding in the cemetery from Dr. Finkelstein.
Jack, I know how you feel.
Sally feels a longing for something different. She's unsatisfied with her life provided by a more literal captor. Both she and Jack feel trapped and stagnant. They both want to find out who they are without the expectations set by others weighing them down. This feeling of burdensome oppression is probably the most prevalent theme overall in the story, and it could be because the creator of the story was feeling the same thing. The next day, November 1st, Jack realizes he's been wandering all night and isn't sure where he is. He finds himself in the center of a clearing between 7 trees, each painted with a unique design and a door handle. These trees are known as the holiday doors, portals responsible for transport between the home realm of each major holiday. Jack is stricken by the Christmas door because of the shiny ornaments. Imagine if it wasn't and he took over St. Patrick's Day or something. Or imagine if this took place a decade later and he ended up going to 9/11 world. Now that would be crazy. Jack stumbles through the Christmas door and arrives in Christmas Town, where he's captivated by the welcoming and cozy feelings.
What's this? What's this? There's color everywhere.
It's Christmas Town. That's what I just said. He comes to find out the leader of the town is an ominous person who he mishears as Sandy Claus. For the first time in a long time, Jack feels excited about something new and thinks maybe this can break him out of his Halloween fatigue. Jack Skellington's Halloween fatigue may be a reflection of what the creator and producer of The Nightmare Before Christmas, Tim Burton, was feeling when he wrote it. Now, make no mistake, Burton has only spoken highly of Halloween and seems to enjoy utilizing his spooky German expressionist aesthetic as seen in The Nightmare Before Christmas, Edward Scissorhands, the 1988 film that I can't say because I've already reached the limits, Batman, Batman Returns, The Corpse Bride, Wednesday, even his shorts Vincent and Frankenweenie. But he does venture out from this with other movies and projects that spark his interest, which are nothing like the others, such as Ed Wood, Big Eyes, even his 2001 reboot of The Planet of the Apes, all which stray far from the style that's expected of him, just like Jack does when he decides to celebrate Christmas. Burton's stated inspiration is a fascination with the holidays.
Growing up in Burbank, you really latch onto the seasons because you don't really get them in Southern California. The only way you know it's a new season is if you walk into Save On or Thrifty and walk down the aisle and see Halloween decorations or Christmas decorations, and that's where you got your sense of holiday or season.
He explains that he used to stick Halloween decorations on the Christmas tree as a joke, but it made him like the idea of the two holidays colliding.
Because it's my two favorite holidays, the idea of combining both with each other was just part of the energy and the fun of the whole piece for me.
So if that part of Jack's character is inspired from Burton's personal feelings, I don't think it's a stretch to assume that his desire to break out of his expected niche is also a personal touch. He even talks about how he was only given the green light to make The Nightmare Before Christmas after getting a few successful movies under his belt. Writers and directors can be typecast the same way that actors can. He was starting to develop that reputation that's so closely associated with him today. Gothic but fantastical, eerie yet whimsical. It's not as though he disliked this role, but it's the same thing we see with Jack Skellington. Too much of anything can lead to fatigue. I mean, Jack is so excited to see a new holiday town that he breaks into a kid's room and touches him while he's sleeping. No one talks about this. Now I know what you're thinking. Spooky things are the best things. How could Jack or Tim Burton possibly experience fatigue? Well, I've experienced this myself being a horror content creator. Obviously, horror is something that I've always been passionate about and still am passionate about more than anything, but sometimes I see stuff outside of horror and I think, oh, it would be cool to make something like that. Or I just have ideas that don't have anything to do with horror, but are still good ideas. But with every passing day, I become entrenched deeper into my role as the horror guy, which is a dream come true, but it also makes it harder and harder to deviate from that whatsoever, because it would just be weird if I made a horror history that wasn't focused on horror. And the prime example of this all is Halloween. I love Halloween. I love October. I think there should be 2 Octobers, one for me to work and get out all the content that I want to make, and one for me to just enjoy, watching horror movies, visiting haunts, doing Halloween decorations, eating candy corn, playoff baseball, etc. But there's not. Every year, I have to start working on my October content earlier and earlier, and it's pretty much gotten to the point where I immediately start working on the next October right after Halloween. Just like Halloween Town in A Nightmare Before Christmas.
There's only 365 days left till next Halloween. 364.
And while I did choose this and wouldn't change that choice even if I could, it can just still be a little bit overwhelming. As alluded to by Tim Burton, there's something healthy about having seasonality in your life, and you don't really have that when every day is Halloween. Again, I like every day being Halloween and I prefer it, but there are still drawbacks. For example, I have spooky stuff as the general aesthetic of my living space that I leave up year round. But by doing that, I don't get the dopamine hit of putting up Halloween decorations. So my solution is that I leave the nice stuff out year round and try to have a subtle gothic aesthetic going. going. But the tackier Halloween store type decorations I take down and put up the next year. I've got it all figured out. But Jack is still trying to figure it out. He thinks his version of Christmas is gonna be the best thing ever. He makes it back to Halloween Town the next day. The citizens have put out several search parties for Jack at that point and have been distraught by his short absence. Apparently the search party does not extend outside the town because it doesn't seem like any of them have found the holiday doors. Jack calls a town meeting to explain Christmas to everyone. And they don't really understand, but they seem excited just because Jack is excited. Like when I watch a video about a sensational speedrun of some game that I have never and will never play. The next day, Jack, still determined to get a better understanding of Christmas, borrows some equipment from Dr. Finkelstein and locks himself away in his tower, conducting a lot of experiments in an attempt to get to the bottom of Christmas. Sally sees him working and decides to deliver him a romantic gift basket. I think she wants to jump his bones. However, the moment is ruined for her when she sees a vision of a Christmas tree in flames, a sign that something horrible is going to happen to Jack's new Christmas ambitions. Everyone in town notices that something's up with Jack and express concern about his reclusiveness.
He's all alone up there, locked away inside.
Never says a word. Hope he hasn't died.
Which is kind of extreme. He's just been at home for an evening. They're way too obsessed with him. It's another example of why Jack is feeling unenthusiastic about the expectations put on him. This is not dissimilar to actual celebrities and their struggles with constantly being barraged by fans.
I don't care that this crazy type of behavior comes along with the job. That does not make it okay.
Just don't come to my house, please. Are we done?
This is my home, you know what I mean? This is where I live, and I don't appreciate you guys being here. You know, at the end of the night, when you come home, you just want to relax, you just want to spend through that.
Still asking for the hug is crazy. Unable to get Christmas off the brain, or I guess the skull, Jack makes a decision to take the winter holiday as his own.
This year, Christmas will be ours!
Jack sends requests for every citizen in town to take meetings with him at Town Hall, where he gives out individual assignments for them to start creating Christmas. He asks Dr. Finkelstein to construct some reindeer, and he hires Lock, Stock, and Barrel, Oogie Boogie's henchman, to get Sandy Claus and bring him forward, seeing as how they have experience with the whole kidnapping thing. He tells them to leave Oogie Boogie out of this, but they don't do that. They're Oogie Boogie's henchmen. What did you think they were gonna do? They immediately conspire to kidnap the Sandy Claus, and Oogie Boogie overhears them, taking interest in Sandy Claus himself. Meanwhile, Sally tries to warn Jack about her vision, but he brushes her off and instructs her to sew his new Sandy Claus suit. A few hours later, Lock, Shock, and Barrel show up with the Easter Bunny, because they always seem to get the wrong person, so Jack gives them directions to correct their mistake and bring back Sandy Claus. This is also the first time we really get to see Jack's frightening side. Everyone in town starts on their tasks, and on November 22nd, decorations go up and Jax is excited to see his version of Christmas taking shape. On December 10th, 1993, Dr. Finkelstein makes a breakthrough, as the skeleton reindeer are pumped with electricity, bringing them to life and giving them the ability to fly. This is obviously a direct reference to Frankenstein, which seems all too fitting. The main idea behind Frankenstein was to raise a moral quandary. Dr. Frankenstein tried to take the power of granting life and death into his own hands by creating the monster, but he may not have been qualified to have that kind of power, and it ends in disaster. Which isn't far from Jack's situation in The Nightmare Before Christmas. He's taking over a holiday that does not belong to him, and is about to learn a lesson in taking something over when he's underqualified. After messing up with the Easter Bunny, Lock, Shock, and Barrel must have regrouped and thought through their plan more carefully, deciding not to capture Sandy Claus until Christmas Eve. They bring him to the Pumpkin King as he's suiting up, interrupting Sally, who's trying to warn Jack one last time about the impending disaster. Jack meets Santa, realizes he doesn't have claws, and informs him that he'll be taking over his holiday as a favor.
Consider this a vacation, Sandy. A reward. It's your turn to take it easy.
Jack swipes Santa's hat and tells Lock, Shock, and Barrel to make sure he's comfortable, but also implying that they should keep him detained. Of course, they take him straight to Oogie Boogie.
Well, well, well. What have we here? Santa Claus, huh? Ooh, I'm really scared. So you're the one everybody's talking about.
Sally attempts to thwart Jack's plans for his own good by pouring fog juice into the fountain, filling the town with a thick haze, rendering his skeleton reindeer unable to fly. However, Jack, probably remembering his research where he read the story of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, realizes that Zero's nose glows, just like Rudolph's did, and takes off with Zero at the head of his team. Jack has the time of his life manning the sleigh and flying from house to house, but given that he isn't actually qualified to take over a holiday that he just learned about, the presents that he delivered are anything but wholesome.
And what did Santa bring you, honey?
By the way, I know that my thesis has been that Tim Burton has been channeling himself through Jack Skellington, but I did want to point out that this kid's name, according to merchandise listings, is Timmy. He's the only one who's not afraid of Jack's gruesome gifts, at least not at first, and he kind of does look like a young Tim Burton. Families were not so chill about this new Santa as Timmy and start calling the police. Must be sad being on duty on Christmas Eve. This dude is just playing tic-tac-toe with himself. Everyone back in Halloween Town tunes in via Cauldron Cast. When Sally hears a radio broadcast announcing that they're calling in armed forces to take Jack down, her only recourse is to head straight to Oogie Boogie's lair to find Santa Claus. Military units fire huge artillery into the sky and shoot down Jack's sleigh. At first, he thinks they're celebrating, but after one reindeer's head is blown off, and after he gets blasted out of the sky, he realizes what a mess he's made.
What have I done? What have I done?
Ironically, I'm sure many of us would have loved the creepy gifts, but for Jack, he's left to wallow in his own failure. That is, until he has a realization. During his lowest moment, Jack is searching for a positive from this whole experience and realizes that he did what he does best, scare the crap out of people. And at least he walked away with some new ideas for next Halloween. It's kind of like he's been reinvigorated by doing something else for a little while. He's gotten to experience that seasonal change after living for so long in a place with no seasons. It's just like what Tim Burton described growing up in Burbank and seeing holiday decorations as his only clue about the time of year. So, after rediscovering his sense of purpose, he arrives at the same conclusion as Sally and rushes home to find Santa Claus and set things right. He finds Sally and Santa on the verge of being dumped into molten lava by a suddenly Bond villain-esque Oogie Boogie and gets there just in time to deliver him a surprise.
What the?
Hello, Oogie.
The showdown between the two Halloween icons takes place on a giant roulette wheel armed with spinning swords, blasting bots, and a chaotic contraption. But Jack dances his way out of harm's way and defeats Oogie Boogie, Weezer style, pulling a thread as the boogeyman gets away, causing him to fall apart into the lava. Santa scolds Jack and mutters something about skeletons, like this has been a common occurrence for him.
Skeletons.
Santa does save Christmas, and even drops by Halloween Town to deliver them a little gift in the form of fresh snowfall. The residents are puzzled but delighted to interact with snow for the first time. Vampires play hockey, and others make snow angels. It's pretty much how Californians might react if it started snowing in Burbank. Dr. Finkelstein reveals his new girlfriend, who seems to be okay with being enslaved by him this time, and Jack finally realizes that Sally had his best interests in mind all along and goes to her on the hill.
For it is plain, as anyone can see, we're simply meant to be.
And it seems that with a side adventure in the books and a new jerry-rigged GF, Jack's Halloween fatigue may be a thing of the past. But after another year of preparation and celebration, he finds himself feeling overwhelmed again. A year later, on October 31st, 1994, Jack's old feelings have crept back up.
This can't go on. You've got to do better, Jack.
He decides to try to find a new and interesting way to spice up Halloween, hoping to make it different. So Dr. Finkelstein gives him an invention he calls the Soul Robber. Basically a weapon that he can use to fight enemies, grab items, and use as a grappling hook. He leaves town for a while to search for more discoveries that might help make next Halloween even better. But while he's away, Lock, Shock, and Barrel somehow revive Oogie Boogie.
Now we can bring back Oogie.
Yeah, how hard can it be?
Yeah, apparently all they had to do was sew him back together. Not sure why they couldn't have done that at any time. When Jack gets back, the town is mostly vacant, and an announcement goes out that Oogie is the new ruler of Halloween Town, which he's renaming to Oogie Town. Apparently Oogie's version of Halloween includes putting people in real danger, where Jack's scares were all harmless fun.
Terrible things happened while you were gone, Jack. Terrible things.
So Jack sets out to stop him, retrieving holiday doors, saving the townspeople, and defeating Oogie's monsters along the way. On December 24th, he fights Dr. Finkelstein, who's been corrupted by a new evil brain. After getting clues from a few more rescued townspeople, he learns that Oogie has kidnapped the leader of each holiday, and makes his way into the Grisly Gauntlet to fight him.
I can assure you, the leader of every holiday is right where he should be. And you're looking at him.
The two do battle on the roulette wheel again, a gamble of life and death, you might say. But Jack discovers that he was only fighting a shadow. The real Oogie is in Christmas Town. He probably would have been better off not giving this information to Jack though, because once he restores the holiday doors, he goes there, rescues Sandy Claus from a trap, and squares off with the real Oogie, who absorbs more bugs than ever, turning him into a giant, towering monster. The battle is tougher than ever, but with the help of his soul robber and his Pumpkin Jack form, the overgrown Sackman is outfought, outdanced, and outclassed by the Pumpkin King, and Christmas is saved again. And Jack learns an important lesson about setting out to discover something new.
You're not leaving again, are you?
No. Something tells me the most wonderful discoveries are a little closer to home.
Which does kind of fly in the face of what he learned during The Nightmare Before Christmas, where leaving home is what reinvigorated him, but maybe the takeaway is that there should always be a balance between familiar comforts and new discoveries. As a result, he spends the next year staying local and working on creating a new holiday portal. I'm not sure why he needs this when the holiday doors exist. Maybe it's more of a backup in case someone steals the doors again. Things mostly settle down around this time, the biggest disturbance being when Jack's dog Zero accidentally gets sucked into the portal, leading to the events of the graphic novel Zero's Journey. Jack organizes a search party, which again doesn't seem to consider the possibility of Zero having gone out of town until Sally spots him inside the portal to Christmas Town. At first, the mayor sends Lock, Shock, and Barrel to retrieve Zero, because apparently he's learned literally nothing from the last 3 adventures. Come on, we gotta stop trusting these guys. In the end, Jack rounds up the whole town to go search for his ghostly pup in Christmas Town, which ends up being entirely unnecessary, because when Jack asks Santa if he's seen Zero, he immediately recognizes him as their hero, and the two reunite. It's assumed that things go back to normal after this, and Jack doesn't appear again for decades. In Henry Selick's Wendell and Wild, which came out in 2022 and takes place more or less in the modern day, so I'll probably just call this 2022, Jack's skull and a few bones are seen in the closing credits, buried with other skeletons underground. This has caused some to speculate about him being dead.
Jack, but they said you were dead. You must be double dead.
Well, I guess now he's triple dead. However, this seems unlikely. We know Jack can snap himself back together and go right back to normal, and not even military-grade missiles can stop him. Hell, when he was dismembered in James and the Giant Peach, he looked more irritated than hurt. I would theorize that at some point after completing the holiday portal, he set out again to try to find new ideas to make Halloween even scarier, and maybe even ran into some trouble in the real world. But that doesn't mean that he won't eventually be dug up, reassembled, and welcomed back to Halloween Town as their king. Because even if he does get hit with Halloween fatigue every now and then, I know firsthand that a true spook fanatic will always recharge when the October moon rises. It's fitting that The Nightmare Before Christmas reflects this idea, because I think Jack Skellington is one of the figures who helped create that year-round Halloween aesthetic to begin with, through movies, games, comics, merchandise, attractions, and most importantly, the horror community. And if you're a part of that community, you're gonna wanna subscribe to CZsWorld for new horrors every week, ring the death bell, and select all notifications, and I will see you next year, assuming we both survive.